There is a profound distinction that separates the heart's true calling from the soul's deepest longing. It's a truth elegantly captured by the philosopher Erich Fromm, who perceived two very different kinds of love. One, born of immaturity, declares, "I love you because I need you." It's a love rooted in emptiness, a desperate attempt to fill a void within. But then there is mature love, a love that resonates with a higher frequency, one that speaks from a place of wholeness and proclaims, "I need you because I love you." This is the sacred frequency of divine connection. I want you to feel into those words for a moment. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship that feels like both a breathtaking summit and a treacherous battlefield? A connection that consumes your very essence, where one moment you are soaring on the peaks of ecstatic passion, feeling an intense, vibrant chemistry that seems to rewrite the stars, and the next, you are navigating an emotional minefield, where every step is fraught with peril. A place where unspoken words cut deeper than any blade, where the smallest gesture can ignite a raging inferno of conflict. In this tempest, even the simple, divine right to breathe, to claim a sacred space for yourself, becomes a source of profound guilt. If this resonates with you, if you feel a stirring of recognition in your soul, know that you are not alone. So many of us have walked this path. Take a deep breath and allow this message to be a sign of your awakening. Let us know in the comments if you feel this connection, perhaps with a simple, "I resonate with this," so that others may know they are not walking this path in solitude. Your journey of understanding begins now. And yet, you stay. Not because it is convenient, and certainly not from a place of weakness. You stay because a deep, intuitive part of your soul believes this love is worth the battle. You feel that this overwhelming chaos is simply the price of admission for a connection that feels profoundly destined. But here is a universal truth you must understand. The most insidious spiritual traps, the most toxic of relationships, rarely reveal their true nature at the outset. They do not arrive with blaring warnings. Instead, they build their foundations gradually, layer by insidious layer, upon the bedrock of your deepest hopes. They begin with the sweet melody of affection, the resonant vibration of commitment, and the whispered promises of a shared destiny. Then, almost imperceptibly, the frequency shifts. What was once affection begins to feel like a subtle, energetic control. What was once nurturing care transforms into invasive surveillance. And the beautiful connection you cherished starts to feel like a heavy chain of dependency. You can't see it clearly because you are in the eye of the storm, but you begin to feel a constant energetic debt, as if loving this person requires you to diminish your own light, to sacrifice pieces of your soul. Perhaps this is a story you have lived, a cycle you are trapped in right now. Or maybe you see this shadow playing out in the life of someone you hold dear. You might hear the justifications, the whispers that try to rationalize the pain. He only acts this way because his love is so intense. Or, she is just deeply insecure. She doesn't mean any harm. These are the mantras we repeat to ourselves while we justify behaviors that are silently draining our vital life force, our sacred energy. We become entangled in relationships where we are made to feel guilty for wanting a moment of silence, a sanctuary for our own thoughts. A reality where saying no is enough to trigger a devastating storm of emotional blackmail, a chilling distance, or an unpredictable, frightening outburst. And then, the cruelest twist of all begins. You start to doubt your own spirit, your own perception of reality. Am I exaggerating? You ask yourself, is the problem, somehow, me? This self-doubt is one of the most subtle and dangerous poisons of a toxic bond. It doesn't just hurt you, it distorts your reality, slowly and systematically undermining your self-confidence, until you can no longer distinguish between true, divine love and the desperate need for emotional survival. This is not a judgment. This is an invitation from the universe to look with unflinching honesty at the dynamics you have called love. Dynamics that may, in fact, be poisoning your emotional and spiritual health. Let us explore together the 7 sacred signs that your soul is crying out for you to recognize. Signs that you are in a toxic relationship guided by the wisdom of some of the brightest minds who ever studied the human psyche. What you are about to hear is not shallow advice. These are uncomfortable, liberating truths. Because sometimes, the only thing we need to break free from a destructive cycle is to finally see what was once hidden in the shadows. If you are ready to face this with divine courage, stay with me. What comes next may sting, but it can also set you free. The first and most powerful sign is this: you confuse intensity with love. It is a profound paradox that some of the most spiritually draining and toxic relationships are also the most difficult to leave. Why is this? Because they offer something that at first glance feels incredibly rare and valuable: intensity. They are an emotional roller coaster of euphoric highs and devastating lows. You experience moments of emotional ecstasy that feel like a direct connection to source, followed by passionate, tear-filled reconciliations after explosive fights that leave your spirit shattered. You may even find that the jealousy, the possessiveness, feels like proof of how much the other person cares. This whirlwind of emotion creates a powerful, addictive, energetic bond. But intensity is not synonymous with love. It is not the frequency of true, stable, divine connection. This is one of the most dangerous misconceptions we can carry in our hearts. Freud spoke of this as the compulsion to repeat. It's an unconscious tendency, a soul pattern, to seek out emotional experiences that mirror the unresolved traumas of our childhood. If you grew up in an unstable environment where affection and pain were tragically intertwined, your brain, your very energetic system, learned that love must be accompanied by suffering. Your soul learned to recognize chaos as home. So when you enter a relationship marked by this same emotional instability, you don't reject it, you recognize it. On a deep, unconscious level, it feels familiar. You are drawn to it, not out of a desire for pain, but out of a soul's deep yearning to finally heal that original wound, to rewrite that old story with a different ending. Erich Fromm called this dynamic a symbiotic fusion, a state where two people merge into an illusion of unity but are actually trapped in a dynamic of profound dependency. It's an addiction. Your brain becomes wired to the cycle of tension and relief, releasing dopamine not in moments of peace, but in the dramatic aftermath of conflict. You become chemically dependent on the chaos itself, mistaking the adrenaline of the fight and the euphoria of the makeup for the depth of true love. But a healthy, divine love does not demand your peace as payment. It is a sanctuary, not a storm. It is the calm, steady vibration of a love that nurtures, not a chaotic frequency that depletes. Feel this truth. True love brings you closer to your higher self. It does not require you to survive a constant battle. It feels like peace. The second sign is that you find yourself on a mission to fix them. The relationship ceases to be a partnership of equals and transforms into a project, with you as the tireless savior. You begin to notice their destructive behaviors, the shadows they carry, the traits of their emotional imbalance. And something awakens within you an urgent, almost overwhelming need to heal them, to help them, to save them from themselves. Suddenly, your sacred energy is no longer focused on your own growth and alignment, but is poured entirely into their wounds. The connection is no longer about shared joy, but about your mission to rescue them. And you, without realizing it, take on the sacred, but deeply misguided, role of the savior. This is an emotional trap disguised as altruism. The great psychologist Carl Jung explained this process with the concept of projection. We are unconsciously drawn to people who mirror the unresolved, unacknowledged parts of ourselves, what he famously called the shadow. You see your own unhealed wounds reflected in them. It is an emotional wound within you that is crying out for meaning, for validation, and it tries to find it by turning the other person into a reflection of your own shadow. If you deny your own deep-seated insecurity, you may find yourself magnetically drawn to someone who is insecure, and you will dedicate yourself to trying to strengthen them, to build them up, all the while neglecting the fragile parts of your own spirit. If you hide your own anger, suppressing it deep within your unconscious, you may find yourself entangled with someone explosive, and you will spend your days trying to calm their storms, to soothe their rage. never realizing that it is your own inner tempest you are trying to quell. This narrative is not truly about them, it is about you. Erich Fromm also described this as a form of neurotic love, a conditional affection where you only feel worthy if you are useful, if you are needed, if you are indispensable to someone else's survival. This kind of love is never free. It must be earned through constant sacrifice, and that is why you find yourself trapped in a cycle of chronic frustration. The more you try to help, the more frustrated you become, because the other person resists. The more they resist, the more you insist. And when things don't improve, you don't blame them. You blame yourself for not having done enough, for not loving enough, for not being patient enough. But here is the hard truth that must be said. You are not in a relationship. You are in an emotional battlefield, fighting against ghosts that are not yours. You are trying to save someone who may not even want to be saved. And the more you try to fix them, the more you break yourself in the process. The third sign is that you begin to lose your sacred sense of self. In the beginning of the connection, you still remember who you were. You had your own opinions, your own clear desires, your own divinely inspired dreams. You were a complete universe unto yourself. But little by little, almost imperceptibly, all of that starts to dissolve into the relationship. Your opinions begin to morph to match theirs to avoid conflict. Your desires are placed on a dusty shelf in the back of your mind, replaced by a singular focus on their needs. Your boundaries, once clear and strong, begin to blur and then disappear entirely. It's a slow, silent erosion of your identity. Everything starts to revolve around the other person. What do you like? Someone might ask, and you find yourself pausing, realizing you have to check in with their preference first before you can answer. What do you want? A friend might inquire, and the honest answer is, I don't care, as long as they are happy. What do you feel? Your own soul might whisper in a quiet moment, and you realize with a shock that you don't even know anymore. When you are in a toxic relationship, this disconnection from yourself doesn't happen abruptly. It's a gradual, sneaky, and almost imperceptible process, until one day you look in the mirror and you no longer recognize the person you see. This is one of the deepest and most devastating effects of these relationships, the erosion of your identity. Freud would describe this as a form of ego repression. When your survival, your emotional stability, feels dependent on pleasing the other person, you begin to unconsciously repress your own impulses. You silence your anger. You ignore your discomfort. You suppress your desires. Over time, you become only what the other person needs or demands you to be. Erich Fromm called this symbiotic fusion, a state where two people cease to exist as sovereign individuals and become one indistinct, enmeshed emotional entity. Their mood dictates your day. Their crises control your decisions. You start to meticulously shape your behavior, recalculating every sentence before you speak, not to express your truth, but to avoid triggering a negative reaction. You give up little things, one after another, until there is nothing left that is just yours. And this is not harmony. It is the slow fading of your soul's light. The fourth sign is that you feel a pervasive, gnawing guilt for wanting your own space. In a healthy, spiritually aligned relationship, space is a natural necessity. Silence is allowed. Solitude is respected. Having personal boundaries is not seen as an act of rejection. It is recognized and honored as a vital part of building a mature, conscious partnership. Each soul needs its own sanctuary to recharge, to connect with its higher self, to simply be. But in the distorted reality of a toxic relationship, something as essential as personal space is transformed into something forbidden. The desire for an evening alone becomes a source of conflict. The need for a quiet moment is twisted into an accusation. You've changed, they might say. You don't care about me anymore. Or perhaps they use the most dreaded manipulation of all. If it were the other way around, I would never do this to you. This is how your simple divine desire for autonomy is transformed into an emotional sin. And what arises from this? Guilt. Overwhelming, paralyzing guilt. You start to feel bad for wanting to sleep alone, for not responding to a message immediately, for wanting to go out with friends without needing to explain every single detail. The very idea of prioritizing yourself, of tending to your own inner garden, makes you feel deeply uncomfortable, as if loving yourself were a betrayal to them. The most insidious part is that this guilt is often not imposed explicitly through angry words. It is subtly implanted through disappointed glances, through heavy silences, through 1,000 tiny emotional manipulations. It's a system of psychological surveillance where every step you take towards your own autonomy must be calculated to avoid triggering their emotional reaction. The effect of this is brutal. You stop breathing deeply. You stop relaxing. You stop existing naturally. You become an edited, censored version of yourself, always available, always present, always alert. And behind this forced submission lies the unconscious belief that to love is to nullify oneself. But what if you stopped feeling responsible for maintaining the other's emotional stability? What if the guilt you carry isn't truly yours? That is the question that leads us to the next point. When you not only feel guilty for distancing yourself, but start to see yourself as emotionally responsible for the other's suffering. The fifth sign is that you become deeply attached to their pain. Have you ever thought about leaving? Have you allowed your mind to wander into the fantasy of what life could be like without this constant turmoil? Have you mentally rehearsed the breakup conversations, imagined yourself moving on, rebuilding your life? I'm sure you have. But something always holds you back. Something stronger than the fear of loneliness, more paralyzing than the weight of your own guilt. It is the suffering of the other person. Their pain becomes the invisible, unbreakable chain that keeps you tethered to the relationship. And please understand, this is not just about empathy. It is about a distorted and profoundly unhealthy sense of emotional responsibility. You begin to carry the weight of their emotions as if they were your own. You tell yourself, I can't abandon them now, not when they're going through so much. You rationalize their destructive behavior by thinking, they only act this way because they have suffered a lot. And so, you transform your sacred role of partner into that of a caregiver, a martyr. If they show fragility, if they threaten to crumble, your perceived necessity in their life becomes even greater. This creates a dangerous illusion. The belief that your presence is the only emotional foundation supporting that person, that your absence would be a form of cruelty. But here is the hard, liberating truth you must accept. You are not responsible for healing the pain that the other person refuses to face. Your presence does not save anyone. Often, it merely postpones the inevitable collapse for both of you. And the cruelest part is that, while you cling to their pain, something familiar and ancient hides behind this dynamic, the feeling of reliving something old. As if this relationship, no matter how dysfunctional, echoed childhood memories, patterns you have already lived. And that is why, in a strange, twisted way, it feels so right. You are not just attached to their pain, you are attached to the role their pain allows you to play: the healer, the savior, the one who finally gets it right. The sixth sign is that you find yourself repeating what has hurt you before. Have you ever wondered why certain relationships in your life seem to follow the exact same script? Even when the people change, the story remains hauntingly familiar. It's as if you are living the same tragic play over and over, just with new characters. You promise yourself that this time will be different. You tell yourself that now you know what to avoid, that you've learned your lesson. But somehow, everything repeats itself. The same agonizing pains, the same deafening absences, the same silences that scream with unspoken resentment. This is not a coincidence. It is a pattern. And according to Freud, it has a name: the compulsion to repeat. In psychoanalysis, this compulsion is an unconscious mechanism that leads us to seek and repeat unresolved childhood pain. It's not born out of masochism, but as a deeply unconscious attempt to rewrite the past, to live the same scene but with a different, happier ending. Perhaps you grew up with emotional absence, with rejection, with instability, and now, as an adult, you find yourself irresistibly drawn to people who offer you more of the same. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because, on a profound, soul-deep level, you believe that if you can finally win the love of this new, emotionally unavailable figure, you will finally heal that old, gaping wound from your past. This time, you will be loved. This time, you will not be abandoned. This time, you will be enough. Freud also described this as the phenomenon of transference, the tendency to transfer feelings that originally belonged to figures from the past, such as parents or caregivers, onto figures in the present. That's why you might fall in love with someone who is emotionally distant, not because you truly love them for who they are, but because their unavailability activates an old, familiar emotion from your childhood. And deep down, something inside you believes that if you can just make this person love you, it will finally heal the original wound. The problem is that this rarely, if ever, happens. On the contrary, the more you try to change the script, the more trapped you become, because you are not dealing with the present reality. You are trying to heal the past with emotional tools that have already proven to be flawed. And while you try to rescue the wounded child within you, the adult you are today fades away, becomes exhausted, and breaks. And this brings us to the seventh and final sign. You are terrified of who you would be without them. You've thought about leaving. You've visualized your life without that person. You've even caught yourself fantasizing about the silence, the peace, the divine freedom to be who you are without fear of judgment, without guilt, without constant tension. But soon after that fleeting vision of freedom comes the emptiness, a chilling coldness in your chest, and a whispered but persistent question that echoes in the deepest chambers of your soul. What if I am nothing without them? What if I never find someone again? What if this suffering is all that's left for me? This fear is real, and it is one of the most paralyzing forces that can keep a soul in bondage. In many cases, it has nothing to do with the love you feel for the other person, but with the deep, terrifying disconnection you have with yourself. Jung spoke about this when addressing the fragile ego and the lack of individuation. When your identity is so completely fused with the relationship, leaving feels like leaving behind a part of yourself. It feels like you would become formless, structureless, as if the other person were your only mirror. Without them, who are you? Erich Fromm complemented this reasoning by stating that many people seek what they call love, not for freedom, but for an escape from the existential fear of being alone. An escape from the terrifying prospect of confronting themselves. An escape from the silence, which so often echoes the questions we have avoided our whole lives. This kind of love is not a choice. It is anesthesia. You stay, even knowing that the relationship is destroying your spirit, because the emptiness of being without it seems even scarier than the pain of being within it. Because on some level, you believe that the known suffering is preferable to the unknown abyss of starting over. And this is not cowardice. It is a reflection of an old wound, the wound of never having learned to feel whole while being alone. Perhaps no one ever taught you this, how to be with yourself without abandoning yourself, how to respect your limits without feeling guilty, how to love yourself without depending on another, how to simply feel alive. But the truth is, you will only ever be able to live a true, divine love when you no longer need to lose yourself to be with someone. Relationships should not crush you or fragment you. They should be a sacred space that helps you expand who you are. If that is not happening, maybe it's time to stop asking what is wrong with you and start asking yourself why you still call this love. You deserve something better. But before seeking it outside, you need to find it within. Courage is not leaving without pain. Courage is staying true to yourself, even when everything outside tries to make you forget who you are.